So you want to get smarter? I mean, actually smarter? Let's just forget all the vague advice and those weird brain-boosting fads for a minute. In this explainer, we're going to break down a really straightforward, powerful method for making what you learn actually stick. And no, it doesn't involve eating more blueberries.
Our journey starts with this pretty provocative idea. You know, the traditional path to getting smart. We're talking years and years of school, tons of debt. It doesn't always work out. This really sets the tone for what we're about to explore. A practical, no-nonsense way to learn.
All right, first up, the problem with SMART. Why does all that common advice you hear just fail? Most of it falls into one of two camps. Either it's the super long official path of school, or it's these useless little quick tips. The real challenge is bridging that gap, and that's where most of us just get stuck. We get sold these so-called brain hacks all the time, right? Eat this, drink that, listen to some classical music while you work. But the blunt truth is, they're just distractions. There is no substitute for the main event. You have to actually sit down and learn the stuff. There's just no shortcut around the work itself.
So if brain hacks are out, what's the real first step? Well, it pretty much all boils down to one foundational thing: reading. But it's not just about, opening a book. It's about what you read, and even more importantly, why you're reading it.
See, not all reading is created equal. Fiction is awesome for sharpening your reading speed and boosting your vocabulary. And hey, the dialogue might just make you feel like you have more friends. But nonfiction, that's where the real magic happens if you want to sound smart. It's the key to learning useful skills and being able to drop interesting little nuggets of knowledge into conversations. But here's the trap. You learn something really cool, and you can't wait to share it. And the temptation is to lead with, well, actually, it's definitely the fastest way to prove you know a fact. But let's be honest, it can also make you sound like a bit of a know-it-all. Now, compare that to this approach. It's the same information, but the delivery is totally different. By framing it as a shared discovery like, isn't that crazy? You're presenting the information as something you just learned yourself. You get to teach people without making them feel dumb. That's how you come across as actually intelligent, not just like a walking Wikipedia page.
Just because you read something, it doesn't mean you truly know it. And that brings us to the most crucial part: practice. See, acquiring the information is only step one. Getting your brain to actually hold on to it, that's the real game. This is where something called the learning curve comes in. It's a really simple idea that shows how our skills get better with practice. And what's so fascinating about it is that the most important part of this whole curve is right at the very beginning.
This is basically the 80-20 rule in action. That first 20% of effort, that little bit of initial practice, it gives you a massive 80% of the results. You make these huge leaps right at the start. The takeaway is so clear. Just starting to practice, even just a little, leads to incredible gains. Here's a perfect everyday example. You can watch 100 videos on how to tie a tie, right? But you will never, ever learn how to do it until you have a tie in your hands and you're doing it along with the video. That knowledge only becomes a skill through active, simultaneous practice. Okay, so now we get to the core mechanic of this whole thing: hacking your brain's operating system. Think of your brain like a filter. It's constantly deciding what's important enough to keep and what to toss. Our job is to convince it that the new information we're learning is genuinely useful. And here's how simple this can be. Let's say you read a chapter on how to efficiently clean a bedroom. To make that info stick, you have to give your brain a reason to save it. So what do? You immediately go and clean a bedroom. By applying the knowledge right away, you send a huge signal to your brain that says, hey, this is important. So it really boils down to this simple three-step process. First, you learn the information. But what if you can't practice for real, like jump-starting a car? That's where steps 2 and 3 are just genius. You create a mental use case by imagining a situation. And then you practice by visualizing the entire process, step by step. You're basically tricking your brain into thinking you've already used the skill, which flags it as important info to save. Now, if this is starting to sound a little familiar, it should, because it's the exact same principle behind our entire school system. A test is nothing more than an artificial, high-stakes situation made up by a teacher to force your brain to believe that a piece of information is useful and worth remembering. But here's the fatal flaw in that system. The use case, the test, is temporary. The second you walk out of that exam, the stakes are gone. And your brain goes, okay, that information is no longer useful, and it promptly moves it to the recycling bin. This is exactly why we forget so much of what we supposedly learn in school. So if we want to learn effectively and actually make it stick,
What's the single best tool for the job? Well, let's talk about what our source calls the S-tier learning tool, which basically just means the absolute top-of-the-line, best of the best format for getting smart and getting smart fast.
The answer is probably going to surprise you. It's not YouTube, it's not documentaries, and it's not podcasts. The single most powerful tool for rapid, effective learning is the humble textbook.
I mean, the difference is just stark. A YouTube video is super easy to watch, but it's passive. The information density is pretty low, and you're going to forget almost all of it. A textbook, on the other hand, forces you to be an active participant. It's dense with information, and because you're so actively engaged, your ability to retain that info is incredibly high.
So what's their secret? Well, textbooks just cut out all the fluff. It's pure, dense information. But their real killer feature is the built-in practice questions. They force you to immediately run that learn and apply cycle, creating those crucial use cases that we've been talking about that make knowledge stick.
Ultimately, this whole system is about creating a reason for your brain to care. You don't need a teacher to give you a test, you can just create your own. So the next time you're learning something new, ask yourself this: what high-stakes question can I create right now to convince my brain this information isn't just useful, but absolutely essential to remember